Hello everyone, tonight I bring you a story that feels more like a nightmare than reality, a mystery so chilling that even the bravest souls hesitate to speak of it in the dark. This is the tale of a village that disappeared overnight, a community that seemed to dissolve into the shadows of time, leaving behind silent homes, unfinished meals, and questions that no one has been able to answer. Imagine you are traveling through the countryside, following a winding dirt road that cuts through fields and forests. The sun dips low on the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple. You expect to see smoke rising from chimneys, the faint laughter of children, and the chatter of villagers preparing for the evening. But instead, when you arrive, the air feels unnaturally heavy. There is no sound, no footsteps, no conversations, not even the bark of a stray dog. The village lies before you, but it is empty, abandoned, frozen in a moment that suggests everyone left in the middle of their daily lives. Houses stand with doors half open, as if someone had left in a hurry. Pots of food sit cold on stoves, untouched. Chairs are pushed back from tables, as though a family had been eating and suddenly vanished. Tools are scattered outside, as if farmers and craftsmen had simply dropped everything mid-task. Even the livestock appear confused, wandering without their caretakers. The entire scene feels as though life had been interrupted in an instant. This is not just a ghost story created for fear. It is a case that has been recorded in local folklore, retold by travelers, and investigated by researchers. Yet no matter how much time passes, the mystery remains. What force could remove every person from a village without leaving behind evidence of violence, natural disaster, or even the tracks of where they went? Some believe the village was taken by disease, a plague that struck so quickly that people fled in panic. Others whisper of supernatural forces, spirits that came to claim the souls of those who lived there. And then there are the darker theories, government experiments, secret societies, or even otherworldly abductions. But before we dive into the possible explanations, let us step back in time. Let us imagine the lives of these villagers before the disappearance, to understand just how unsettling this story truly is. The village was small, nestled between rolling hills and thick forests. Its people were simple, living off the land. They farmed, raised animals, and crafted goods to trade with travelers passing through. Life was not easy, but it was steady. Generations had lived and died there, and for them, the village was the center of their world. Children played in the dusty streets, elders gathered at the well to share stories, and nights were filled with the smell of burning wood and the sound of voices drifting into the dark. Nothing about the village suggested that something extraordinary or terrifying was about to happen. And then, one night, everything changed. The exact date has been lost to history, blurred by time and retellings. Some say it was during the early 19th century, while others insist it happened centuries before. What is certain is that the story always describes the same chilling discovery. A traveler or group of travelers passing through found the village empty. They expected to find life and instead stumbled into silence. The discovery spread quickly. People from nearby towns came to see it with their own eyes, only to leave with more questions than answers. The details of what was found are disturbingly consistent, even across different versions of the tale. Meals were left half-eaten. Water buckets sat filled as though someone had just drawn them from the well. Clothes hung unfinished on looms. In one house, a candle still burned, its wax nearly gone. It was as though time had stopped in the middle of ordinary life. What makes the case even stranger is the complete lack of evidence pointing to what happened. There were no signs of struggle, no footprints leading away from the village, no mass graves, no bodies, no blood. The people simply vanished. Naturally, theories began to spread. The first and perhaps simplest explanation was disease. In times past, outbreaks of plague or strange fevers could strike terror into entire communities. Some villagers may have fled in fear of catching it, abandoning their homes in desperation. But this theory does not explain why belongings were left behind, why no one took food, clothing, or even animals with them. If they had fled, surely some trace of their journey would remain, yet nothing was ever found. The second theory suggests a natural disaster. Could it have been an earthquake, a landslide, or a sudden flood that drove the villagers away. But again, no evidence supports this. The houses stood unharmed, the fields remained untouched, the land itself offered no clue, and so whispers turned toward the supernatural. Some claimed the village was cursed, that it had been built on sacred land, and one night the spirits came to reclaim what was theirs. Others whispered of a shadowy figure seen wandering the outskirts in the weeks before the disappearance, a man no one recognized, whose presence filled people with dread. There are also accounts of strange lights in the sky on the night the villagers disappeared, bright orbs that hovered silently, casting an otherworldly glow over the land. Could it have been some kind of celestial event, or something beyond human understanding? But perhaps the most chilling detail comes from a single witness. One story tells of a lone survivor, a young woman who claimed to have left the village just hours before it vanished. She said that in the days leading up to the event, the air felt heavy, like a storm was coming. Animals grew restless, barking and howling at nothing. People complained of hearing whispers at night, voices calling their names from the darkness. And then, as she left to visit a nearby town, she looked back and saw a strange mist rolling into the village, thick and unnatural, swallowing the homes one by one. When she returned the next morning, everything and everyone was gone. Is this just a legend embellished over time, or was it a desperate attempt by a survivor to explain the unexplainable? For centuries, people have debated the truth behind this mystery. Historians dig through records, searching for mentions of missing populations. Paranormal investigators visit the ruins, or what they believe are the ruins, hoping to feel the presence of those lost souls. But the answers remain elusive. As night falls and the air grows cold, I ask you to picture it for yourself. Walking through empty homes where laughter once echoed, seeing children's toys lying abandoned in the dust, hearing the creak of a door swaying in the wind, as though it remembers the family that once lived inside. This is more than just a disappearance. It is an echo of fear, preserved in silence. And yet, part one of this story is only the beginning, because what investigators and travelers uncovered in the years after the disappearance makes this mystery even stranger. From bizarre artifacts found buried in the soil to chilling reports of ghostly figures still wandering the village, the tale of this vanished community grows darker the deeper you explore it. In part two, we will follow the investigations, the legends, and the terrifying theories that might explain what really happened to the village that disappeared overnight. But for now, let the silence of part one sink in. A silence so complete, so unnatural, that it makes you wonder, what force could erase an entire community, leaving only questions in its wake? The story of the vanished village did not end with the eerie discovery of empty homes and silent streets. In fact, that was only the beginning. Once word of the disappearance spread to nearby towns and cities, groups of investigators, priests, merchants, and even curiosity seekers began traveling to the site. Each came with their own intentions, some to solve the riddle, some to profit from it, and others simply to witness the strange silence for themselves. The first investigators were local authorities, men tasked with ensuring that no crime or rebellion had taken place. They walked the village slowly, house by house, making notes of what they saw. Their accounts are now preserved in fragments, copied and retold in historical records. What stands out most is the way they described the atmosphere. Many wrote that it felt like stepping into a stage set, as though life had been paused mid-act. One man wrote that he felt as if hundreds of unseen eyes were watching him from the shadows, though not a soul was there. They found no signs of war, no evidence of raiders, no tracks of carts or horses leading away. It was as though the earth itself had swallowed the people whole. Even the animals, chickens, cows, and dogs, seemed strangely quiet, wandering without purpose, refusing to leave the village boundaries as though something unseen held them there. One discovery troubled them deeply. In several homes, they found symbols carved into wooden doorframes. At first glance, these markings looked like ordinary scratches, but upon closer inspection, they formed deliberate shapes, spirals, triangles, and crude human-like figures. No villager could explain them, for there were no villagers left to ask. Some investigators believed the markings were remnants of an old superstition, protective symbols carved to ward off evil. Others thought they were warnings, hastily made in the final hours before the disappearance. As weeks turned into months, rumors grew. A nearby priest claimed that the village had been cursed for its sins. He insisted that the markings were not protective, but invitations, symbols drawn in secret to call upon dark forces. When his warnings spread, people began avoiding the area entirely. Travelers took longer routes rather than pass near the village. Farmers refused to graze their animals anywhere close. The land became a place of fear, a void on the map, avoided even in conversation. But curiosity has always been stronger than fear, and so, in the years that followed, adventurers, scholars, and even treasure hunters braved the silence of the empty village, each left with strange stories. Some said they heard whispers at night, voices calling their names in the dark. Others claimed to see shadowy figures darting between houses, vanishing when chased. One man, who spent the night in the village, swore he was shaken awake by invisible hands and fled in terror, never to return. The legend grew darker still when artifacts began to surface. A group of diggers searching near the well-unearthed fragments of bone, not human, but too large to belong to any known animal. The bones were twisted, as if burned or melted, yet there were no signs of fire in the soil. Another group found a shard of glass embedded in the earth, perfectly smooth and shaped like a teardrop. When held up to the light, it seemed to glow faintly, as though holding a piece of the night sky inside it. No one could explain these findings, and soon whispers began linking the village to otherworldly forces. Strange lights in the sky were reported again, years after the disappearance. Farmers in nearby fields told of glowing orbs hovering above the village ruins, moving silently in patterns that no natural phenomenon could mimic. Some claimed these lights descended into the earth, vanishing near the old churchyard. Could it be that the same lights seen on the night of the disappearance had returned, reminding everyone that whatever took the villagers was still there, still watching? Among the most chilling accounts are those of ghostly apparitions. Visitors often spoke of seeing entire families, dressed in simple village clothing, standing in doorways or walking the streets in silence. But when approached, the figures dissolved into mist. Children's laughter was heard faintly, echoing in the empty fields, though no child had lived there in decades. Some left gifts at the doorsteps, food, candles, small trinkets, as offerings to these lost souls, hoping to appease them. Historians tried to make sense of it all. Some suggested famine had struck suddenly, forcing people to flee. Others proposed that invaders had captured the villagers in the night, though why there were no signs of struggle remained unanswered. A few even believed the people had chosen to leave together, part of a mass migration into the unknown. But every theory failed when held against the evidence, or the lack of it. No bones, no graves, no new settlements found elsewhere that matched their numbers. The people had not fled, they had not died in place, they had simply ceased to exist. As the decades passed, the village decayed. Roofs collapsed, weeds overtook gardens, and dust swallowed the once busy streets. Yet the mystery never faded. Each generation found itself haunted by the question, what happened to those people? One modern investigator, a historian named Elias Crow, dedicated his life to answering that question. He spent years collecting records, piecing together fragments of testimony, and even living near the ruins. His conclusion was both chilling and fascinating. He believed the villagers were victims of something he called a time fracture. According to his theory, the village had slipped out of sync with the rest of the world, vanishing into a hidden fold of time. For them, life may have continued, unaware that to outsiders they were gone. Perhaps, he suggested, the villagers still live somewhere, trapped in a loop of endless days, forever repeating their final evening. Of course, many dismissed his theory as fantasy. Yet Crow remained firm, pointing to accounts of strange lights, unexplainable artifacts, and the feeling visitors described of being watched. He argued that these were signs the fracture was still active, and that sometimes, for brief moments, the barrier between worlds weakened, allowing glimpses of the vanished people. Whether or not you believe Crow, his words add another layer of unease. Because if the villagers did slip into another realm of time, then the question is not only what happened to them, but whether it could happen again. The legend of the vanished village has since become a cautionary tale. Travelers tell it to warn others of places where silence feels too heavy, where the air presses down on your chest, where whispers seem to call your name. They say if you feel these things, you should leave at once, before the same force that claimed the village claims you as well. And so, the story lingers, refusing to die. A village once filled with life, now only an echo. Empty houses standing like gravestones. A silence that speaks louder than words. Some say the villagers were taken by disease. Others say by spirits. Others still whisper of alien abductions or government experiments. But in the end, no theory satisfies. No answer feels complete. The truth remains hidden in the shadows, as unreachable as the villagers themselves. Perhaps that is the greatest terror of all. That we may never know. That an entire community can vanish in a heartbeat, leaving behind nothing but mystery. That life, so ordinary and fragile, can be snatched away by forces we cannot see or understand. And so, as the night deepens and you sit in the quiet of your room, think of that village. Think of the children who left their toys behind, the families who left meals unfinished, the doors that still swing open in the wind. Think of the silence that replaced their voices, and then ask yourself, what could make an entire village vanish without a trace? The answer, my friends, may never come. And that is why the story of the village that disappeared overnight remains one of the most haunting unsolved mysteries of all time.